Let's talk about Wolf in Shadow by David Gemmell. So this was requested by James Fetcho on my 100 subs video. This was Gemmell's fourth novel from 1987, his first non-Draenei cycle novel, that's his most famous cycle, and also the first in the Stones of Power cycle, and the first within that of the Jon Shannow trilogy. This is a post-apocalyptic western. Shannow is the Jerusalem man. He is a figure who prophecy foretells may be able to overthrow or defeat or be an obstacle to the Satanlord, the leader of a dark cult who rule a state which is taking over the remaining lands left over after the Earth's axis is tilted. And Gemmell says that it was his love letter to Louis L'Amour, the great Western writer, who I have here. There's a Louis L'Amour novel, Lonely on the Mountain. So this was his love letter to Louis L'Amour's action thrillers. But I think as you read it, you see it's also very heavily influenced by another Western piece of fiction by Jack Schaefer, Shane. I wonder if the name is anything to do with that. Certainly the first section of the book is a post-apocalyptic retelling of Shane. Apart from those authors, are there other influences? Probably. Or perhaps maybe Pale Rider by Clint Eastwood, maybe The Gunslinger and the Dark Tower books by Stephen King. You'd look at those and think, oh, those seem like but then it maybe even some of the shared background to those. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came by Robert Browning, for instance. It's not clear. Gemmell didn't mention those as sources, but certainly when you read it in the context of that era, you think there's some similar stuff brewing, the post-apocalyptic Western. And look, it's hard to review this book, in a way, because there are real concrete criticisms I want to make and need to make, but it's also a very special book. So the flaws are up front. Let's talk about them. The dialogue and pacing are at times off, and it's in part because of an attempt to replicate tropes in the Western fiction genre. So, for instance, dialogue in this book, particularly, I mean, say in L'Amour's books, is very stylised and clipped and rapid. I don't mean kind of deadpan humour rapid and clipped. I mean just in terms of, you very much get like people saying stuff in this fairly flat tone that you will recognise from watching great westerns is a trope in the genre, and it certainly comes across in the written fiction. But it doesn't always work, and sometimes it just feels a bit flat, basically. It doesn't feel clipped and stylised, but just flat. Similarly, the pacing is very rapid. Just there'll be some stuff that happens, your hero or the bad guy or whoever the point of view is goes away and does something, then suddenly we're somewhere else, or suddenly some amazing big event has happened, and you're kind of left to process it and move on very quickly. That is partly, again, a trope, but it doesn't always work. And so it's early in his career. Big events are glossed over, that's what I'm kind of talking about. It's early in his career. His style is still improving and developing, and you see that if you read his books. He wasn't a natural stylist. He was a natural writer of character and action. And he tries a different register here to, say, in the Draenei series. It doesn't always come off. It's not always successful at a style level. But at a content, heart, character, theme level, it comes off in spades, basically. That might sound strange, given, dialogue and pacing matter a lot, most of us would say. But Gemmell was an author with a particular gift that is perhaps not fully replicated by anyone else, even his worthy successors like Sanderson, who many of us might say might prefer to him. He has gifts that are very specific to him and really come out even in stylistically weak novels. I don't know how to put it. His stories and his people matter. They are deep, resonant, mythic stories that, there's some kind of recurrence in them that echoes in the heart. There is a soul on the page, as it were. There's a quote attributed to a famous preacher: "I set myself on fire and the world came to watch me burn." And there's something of that here. Gemmell puts himself on the page. He is like David Drake doing therapy by writing, and it comes out, it bleeds out. And the big themes here are about the nature of faith and redemption, shown through a number of characters. There's Jon Shannow, of course, the Jerusalem man. There's the woman he loves, called Donna. There is the brigand, Daniel Cade, the brigand leader. There's the teacher and mystic Ruth, and there are many others of different backgrounds and kinds. I mean, we're talking about a very large cast who characterization is, despite the problems with style, characterization is usually very deft and you understand what's going on with the character. And he wants to talk about massive themes. Why do people believe in God or not? Why do people say they believe in God? Or why do they not? What's the nature of good and evil, of what makes us righteous? What makes us good people before God and before other human beings? Particularly, pointedly here, this is a major theme, how do violence and civilization and religious morality exist? Or coexist? Can they? And if you've read Shane, or if you've seen the film Logan, you'll know that's a strong concern in Shane. There ain't no living with the killing. There are no more guns in the valley. What's the coexistence possible, if any, between those things, and how do you build a civilization without violence? Gemmell takes a long time to wrestle through this. His characters are very human in their struggles, and they're very well drawn. The questions he asks, he answers, or begins to answer. We might agree or disagree with those answers and with his conclusions, but it's a good discussion. It's something we can take part in. But there is more to praise as well, I think, on top of that, on top of theme, on top of character. The plot has genuinely interesting twists, particularly, perhaps surprisingly, for Gemmell fans. The world building here is excellent. The Drenai cycle, the world building is very perfunctory. The characters and the themes are great, but you don't go to Gemmell for the world building. But here, the world building is really enjoyable. The magic of the Stones of Power is investigated and explored interestingly. The background to the world, the way in which things have happened before will happen again, and the sort of the things that motivate people and stuff. Sometimes they're glossed over too quickly, as I've said, by style issues. But the world building and the plot interlink and are really enjoyable. They're all depicted really well. The cultures of the people as well. Cultures. Gemmell does a bit of it, but there's just some really interesting things here. Often, almost as an aside, like half a chapter of consideration of something. Like there's a cannibal tribe he deals with and considers from a few different lenses, and it's just fascinating. It's something where you almost feel like only Gemmell would have taken the exact approach he does. So it is a flawed book, but it is, I think, for me at least, undeniably a great book. If you read this, tell me what you think. Does it sound attractive to you if you haven't read it? I don't know. Tell me in the comments. Till next time.